Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ranting Atheist podcast. Today we're listening to a conversation I had with a fellow Nigerian atheist. She helped share a perspective that came about from a question I've been asking, like, why is it that even in irreligious spaces is majorly men? It's always men voices that take front and center. And being a man, there are a lot of experiences women have we always be blind to. So I needed to speak to her to help us shed a light on what exactly are we not getting, what exactly are we not seeing. We know in religious spaces the reason why men take front and center is because it is in the theology. But now we have come out of it, we are still seeing the same pattern. Why? What is going on? How do we fix this? How do we start the process of course correcting? So that's basically what our discussion, and it was just a beautiful conversation. I always like talking to this person. Like every time they drop it back to back. So by the time you hear the voice, you know who we are talking about. So if you haven't subscribed up, please consider subscribing on Apple, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, and on YouTube and any other place you find podcasts. Then check out the show notes for links you may find useful, especially our Discord server. Would love to have you there. So now let's go and have a conversation and understand why are there still less women in irreligious spaces. Welcome back. Now welcome back.
Yes.
How you doing now?
I do. Just dealing with this life and all the stress that comes with it, but we push through regardless.
We praise God. We thank the Lord. It is well. It is well. Yeah, that's the usual conversation. I'm like, motherfucker, it is not well. Let's stop that condom obsolete language.
It does help. Like I've always said it, like that blind hope is something that, I get increasingly jealous of, but it's something I know I cannot access because even when I want to kind of let go and delude myself, it just like in 1 second, everything just comes rushing back. Like, it's just like, I can't delude myself. I can't say like, somebody will help me find my car keys when children are suffering and dying and can't find, clean water to drink. Like on one basis that those like prayers or manifestations being answered, but theirs are not. Like, who am I? And it's just that
even secular delulu self, they work.
Yeah, like I mean, even
I
secular, that's why I said manifestation too, because it includes the secular delusion, like the whole astrology, the new age spirituality that we are saying now. Like I find it as absurd. Like it's just like, what are we saying? Anyways, I find it less absurd because their claims the claims that they're making are more wishy-washy. Like when you make solid claims and say, this person loves you and wants to kill you, when you have like actual theology around your belief, that's different because it's like clearly not true. Like when you test it, however, you still believe it. But with astrology, it's more woo. It's more like, oh, I'm manifesting and I'm seeing signs from the other side. Do you get what I mean? Like that's.
And it's always different per person.
Yeah, and it's different per person. I can see why somebody would like listen to that. But when you say things like someone rose from the dead and because of this we are tied and washed through the blood, these are specific claims
that one's even better. Is now next thing it is you also have to come and chop in our delulu.
Exactly.
That's why astrology people, they don't disturb us.
Yeah, they don't. They enjoy themselves. The highest is that when you want to relate with them, they will ask you your sign, to know if they will relate with you or not. And I feel like everybody's free to do that. Like we all have our weird irrational biases. Like me, and
there are some behaviors some people do. I'm like, motherfucker, get the fuck away from me.
And somebody might feel like I'm being irrational for like not accepting that behavior. Someone might think that way. But if consistently in your own life, people who were born in August have been disappointing you, I don't blame you if you don't want to deal with anybody that is born in August. At least for you and your life, that rings true. So, like again, this was something I was talking to someone about, like the idea of like our personal realities. Because as much as we make like claims about the world and about the state of reality, the fact remains that every one of us is living in our own world, like your own world. Like the main characters are different from person to person, and in your own world certain patterns may emerge, right? Some of these patterns, of course, like from a psychological perspective, for instance, if you keep dating the same kind of person, right, that's a pattern, right? That pattern does not exist in the world like at large, but it's a pattern for you. Or you keep dating this kind of woman, you keep dating this kind of man, and like, so we all have like our patterns. Like I said this about like, if a sex worker who like works in a violent environment, and that's like their whole life, right? And they're like, men are violent. On what basis will you say that that person is incorrect? Like, this is their life though. Like, for as long as they stay in that environment, that's what they are going to find. And so making that extrapolation, that statement, men are violent, is a useful tool for them in their particular environment. So that's just like the idea of like the relative truths and how we are all living different lives. It takes empathy to really understand where someone is coming from, because like, again, we're all living different lives.
Yep. Serious empathy, which brings us to the matter that brought us. The reason why I set this up. Like what I have noticed is looking at religion. Yes, we see men in charge, we see men taking front, and this is by design of the theology. But on the flip side, we the religious folk, consider somehow it's still men that are the front line. Why? I kind of get frustrated. Like, is there something that's repelling women? What exactly? So the only person that can answer me is a woman, and that's why I've called you here, because I don't get it. Why?
I think there are a lot of parts to the issue of like not having women.
Let's explore as many as possible, as many as you can.
I think I'm not going to deal with the obvious ones first. I'm going to deal with the ones, a lot of times, when you see an irreligious woman, she's very likely going to be a feminist, right? She's very likely going to be someone that believes in equal rights and all of that, because it matters to us, because, we are the ones like suffering like the end of it, right? And so a lot of times, irreligious women would have deconstructed that alongside their religious deconstruction. And a lot of times, is the feminism that even spurs the religious deconstruction, right? It wasn't the case for me, but sometimes, it is, right? And I would say men don't do that. So what happens is that you have a community of irreligious men, and you will definitely still have a lot of men who subscribe to misogynistic thinking. And in many ways, their justifications are even more insidious than the religious justifications. Like, for the religious justifications, like, the minute you're out of that, you can't see it like for what it is. Like, what do you mean? Like, you have a God-ordained kidney because you have a penis, like, you'll be fine. But when somebody starts talking about, from a logical perspective, based on the scientific literature, and they are just misrepresenting like points and stuff like that, now it's harder to refute, because they are talking from what is perceived to be a standpoint based in logic, and it seems to be a more justifiable reason to keep, women under, right? So I feel like women are going to kind of stay away from that environment. Like, if you see this is America-centric, but I think it has some relevance, like, in other countries, like Nigeria, for instance. The idea of, like, the Reddit atheist, like the stereotypical man who logic. Yes, logic, likes to overcorrect, is not emotionally intelligent, doesn't like women. I feel like that's also something that could repel women from the community. It's just like a lot of men doing logic this, logic that. And, historically, these are the base points that men have used to kind of justify their relegation of women to second-class citizens, that women are not logical creatures. And when you see a community that's just based off men, that seems to be just based on men, like jacking themselves off and saying, oh, we are all so logical, like I think a lot of women will hesitate to be a part of that community. So that's one end of it that it's not like the first thing that a lot of people think about, but it's just very male-centric. Like the ideas of, especially of what most atheist communities are built on, like talking about philosophy and all of those things. Like, it's typically men that can put their heads in the clouds like that, right? A lot of women are dealing with like real issues. Like, I'm not saying philosophy is not real issues, but is it really? It's like, obviously you're theorizing about the world, but it takes a certain level of comfort with the world as it is, right? To be theorizing like up there,
Yeah.
A lot of women will be more interested in like social issues, political issues, anthropology, all of those things, like, because it's really mattering to us as it stands, right? We don't need to talk about how existentialism is true or not, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's one example. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know, it's still something I'm thinking about.
I get it. I resonate with that because it's there's usually this trope of remove your emotion from this, remove your emotion from that. When you remove emotion, you remove the empathy to understand what could possibly drive. And when you even have that inkling, it is the empathy that will make you pause and listen.
Yes.
And listen to the perspective from which this person is sharing their experience. That's what, if you remove that part, that is that's going to cause problems, and I think I agree with you on that.
I feel like that's what a lot of like atheist communities are missing. Empathy. Like you see there, and I don't know, women are socialized so differently from men. At least, like a lot of the women you're seeing now, I don't know, this new generation, things will definitely be different 10, 20 years from now. But a lot of the people you would call women were
in this current Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly, especially Nigeria, because Nigeria still has all those regressive ideas about gender and sex. And women are socialized very differently from men. And a place devoid of any empathy. When I say empathy, I don't mean sentimentality. I'm not saying people should cry and weep all over. But empathy, like...
When people say emotion, they're always thinking of... anger itself is also...
Yes, anger is like, men are not allowed a broad spectrum of emotionality. You are only supposed to like channel your emotions through anger or horniness. I don't know if that's an emotion, but men they are not provided, and maybe happiness. But even then, your happiness can not be too much. Unless you are kind of, sus, right? When you're too excited about something, that giggly, squiddy excitement. I feel like a lot of men kill that in like their childhood. That excitement, like it's hardly not there, except, they're watching sports. That's why I feel like that's why sports is such a safe haven for a lot of men, because when you're watching football, you can cry, you can do all of these things, right? It's an excuse. It's the equivalent of a woman watching a sad movie to like let out the feelings. I feel like that's the space sports exists for men, just a space for them to be as gay as they want. You can hug your bros during like whether you're playing or you're watching the match. Something you couldn't do ordinarily.
Yeah.
So just back to it. The idea of like a place lacking empathy is not a place you will find a lot of women. This seemingly lacking empathy. I am one of the women that have been, kind of in like the irreligious space for like a couple years now. And I don't know. I don't dip it personally because I've been around men for a long time. Like, because of my field, right? I'm in the STEM field. I'm not really in the women-dominated STEM field, biology, you see a lot of women. Like, I'm talking like engineering, math, computer science, and all of that adjacent, right? And I've always been like in classes that are filled with men, like being one of 3 girls in the room or something. So it never really occurred to me. It was until you reached out to me about this topic that I actually looked around and noticed that there are not a lot of women there. I kind of noticed before because my short stint, I won't call it short, but my stint on Clubhouse, even though I'm not on there much, I was with feminists a lot of the time. Like that was a huge part of like my brand. Even I won't say more than the irreligious part, but feminism, queerness, gender, sex, like that was a huge part of what I wanted to talk about. And I found out that, like when I would come to and quote unquote irreligious space, like it was stark, right? There were not a lot of women, even though a lot of the feminists I was talking were irreligious. They just didn't participate much in the irreligious spaces. And that makes sense. That makes sense. It's just that whole logic, this, that, and there. It's just, I don't know, it feels like a male jerk-off fest. Like, these are men, especially when you even like talk about like the philosophy part of it. These are men talking about other men. Right? Have the philosophers will talk about that men. You're talking about like a very male-centric
there's no female, no woman as a philosopher.
How you talk about philosophy is a very male-centric view of the world. Like, it's men talking about the thoughts of other men and like that lived 200 years ago. So you won't be surprised to find that a woman wouldn't have much interest in this because there's not a lot of diversity of thought in all those places. Sure, I can relate, because at the end of the day, these men are human and they are talking about human experiences. But there are certain layers of that being socialized as a woman and, being in a society that perceives you as a woman. There are certain layers that adds to your human experience. And that's something that is never talked about. Because, like, it's men talking about other men. And you don't really have, like, a lot of women whose works were exalted, and women were not even allowed to write in all those times that Aristotle were talking. And even these men themselves, they were misogynistic. Like Aristotle said some very, very misogynistic things. Like, they don't even like women, all of that. So it's part of it. So if they're finding misogyny in the religion and misogyny after, like, why would, like, they'll just deal with their thing in their corner and not really want to associate. But it's something that men don't even realize. For instance, if the roles were reversed, I think a lot of men will understand. Imagine me in a room full of women talking about philosophy from a female perspective, because women are the only ones that have written, and there's no like effort to like say, oh, what might we be missing, right? You don't deep it because you're like, yes, philosophy, but it's like, no, it's male philosophy. Like not
penis philosophy.
Yeah, it is. It's very phallic in nature. Like, there's no we don't like. You can talk about existentialism and all of those things as a man, but what about as a woman, where a lot of like your life is pain? I'm not just talking about like from society. I'm talking about from your biology. Like the idea of childbirth. Do you think that if these philosophers had the experience of childbirth, you might die, and the expectation that they should do it and they should serve another human being, do you think that would color their philosophy a bit? It would. It would. It definitely would. So it's one of those things that we don't even notice because I don't want to use the word patriarchy because that's a buzzword, but the world is androcentric. It means that it revolves around men and the male experience, and women are like tasked with the like decision to other themselves. And it's like, so as a woman, the thing is that you take the male template and you begin to color it in. Right? You begin to color it in for your own particular experience. There's no female templates. Do you get? You have to just take the male template and from there begin to work backwards or begin to add some of what you experience or remove certain things you don't experience. It's kind of like the whole thing with race, because I find that Nigerian men don't really understand what, this part of looking at things, except to bring in like race. Like, in the world, the default is white. You color in for Black experiences. You change for Black experiences. And it must suck because, unlike white Black people in America, whites are the majority here. But like when it comes to men, women things, some countries, women kind of more than men, maybe like 51% to 49. But for the most part, we are equal. This is 50-50. There is no reason for us to be so grossly underrepresented in these conversations, but we are. So yeah, I think that also would contribute to women like staying away from the conversation.
How can we solve this matter? Because how can we start the work? Because it's not something that we can we explore? Do you think like exploring some factors why there are more women in religion than men? Like women seem to take more.
Yes.
Can we explore some factors that maybe we can learn?
Yeah. So I guess that is the third reason you will not find a lot of irreligious women you are not finding women in the religious community, because I feel like there are just not that many irreligious women, period. I think we were talking about this, and I think this is a conversation that people have had about the fact that disenfranchised people don't seem to leave religion. Like prior to this podcast, like recording, you recall I was talking about how a lot of people think that hardships is what makes an atheist, but hardship is what makes a believer. That's how they are built. They're built in hardships. Like, we know the statistics. We know these things. We know that poorer countries are more likely to be religious. We know that disenfranchised people are more likely to have faith. Like, we know this. And from a uniquely female perspective, as a woman, you're taught that a man will save you. Like, the whole idea, like, you're taught to put stock in your beauty and not your books, because after all, a man will marry you and to be a waste anyway, right? And the first man that you're taught to save you is Jesus, right? That's the first man that you're taught to save you. And I was actually talking with one of my female friends about this, like the idea that a lot of women's relationship with Jesus and by extension religious figures. So we are talking about their pastors, we are talking about God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus and men of God. All of that we're talking about is vaguely sexual, is vaguely erotic, and is vaguely romantic.
It's always it's just like a father admiration.
Like it's actually transcends the regular adoration and all of this. So there's that aspect of it. There's an aspect of religion that is very romantic. Like, especially for instance, if you have no partner and you think of Jesus as your partner, and like sees me, he knows my heart, he's my best friend. Like, it's very romantic language. It doesn't have to be. I'm not saying that everyone like who practices this faith is, but like
we can't see Christian and say Jesus is my wife,
my husband. Exactly. And it's such a specific language, because men will not say this because of obviously the gendered implications of that and like sexuality. So it's more accepted. It's more accepted for a woman to think this way. Now juxtapose it and like add it to like the idea of female purity and the idea of being married to Jesus until you find your husband. You see, now you have a kind of warmth. I was talking to my friend, and she goes to a Catholic school, and she was like, she went to a Catholic secondary school, and she's like, the only man she saw, and it was like an all-girls one, the only man she saw was the half naked Jesus on the cross. And that was
with the sexy pecs, man.
Yes, this is crass. Yes, this is crass. But again, like, we can't act like this reality doesn't exist. That a lot of people have a devotion to Jesus, to God, that is sexual, that is erotic. There is definitely that aspect of it. Can you imagine? If our religious figure was female and she was very attractive and she was supposed to be the uber submissive woman who kind of gives you advice, who settles you when you're like angry, like as a man? Do you not think that would have a lot of acolytes and followers? Especially if you were indoctrinated with it as a child, you'd be like, as a man, if you're feeling feelings of anger, know that this woman exists. As a man, if you sleep with any other woman, like if you fornicate, she's watching, she's hurt. bruh.
Jesus Christ.
That is that's a powerful way of driving
Especially
people.
from a young age.
Yes,
Becomes
we
one's
don't
reality.
understand that romance and libido and all of those things. We say sex sells, but in religion it sells too, just in a different way, just in a different form. So,
very subtle.
yes, it's a subtle thing. It's a subtle thing that even people who experience it don't know how to identify it. And it's typically maybe after they leave the religion that they have words for that experience. So that is probably why you see a lot of women holding on to religion, but also like away from like the crass things, but just in general, women tend to be disenfranchised. Like it's your one ticket to hope. If you're not equal in this world, if you cannot find fairness in this world, when your hope is to go to a world where there's no pain, no suffering, no separation based on gendered lines that have made you suffer, that is your only hope. So of course you hold on to the idea of a heaven, because if this one life is all you have, then it's a pretty shitty hand. Except obviously you're Muslim. I feel like women are still disenfranchised in their.
Oh man, that one is even worse.
I'm talking from purely the Christian perspective, because I feel like Christianity is actually more progressive on gender than Islam.
Enlightenment seeped into it a little bit.
Yeah,
the Protestant.
It's definitely still misogynistic, the Old Testament especially. But by the time you get to the New Testament, where Paul is talking, there's no male or female in the kingdom of God. It's easy to hold on to that. Obviously, in the same writings, you hear women should shut up in church, but
they will throw but they will accept that Paul. I'm like,
but you still like. I feel like the beauty of Christianity is there's opportunity to pick and choose that other religions don't provide. Like Islam doesn't. That's why you see a lot more Muslim extremists, because it's hard to be a Muslim and see anything to not be extremist about. But as a Christian, there are still things that can water down your beliefs, like the idea of Jesus loving everyone, all of those things. There are still these little things. Obviously, there are
Christians who don't believe hell is real.
Yes, exactly. There are all these theological inconsistencies, but you hardly hear a Muslim say that, because there's I think it also has to do with the fidelity of the writings that they have. Like, the Muslim, the Quran and the Hadiths and all of those were written in Arabic, and for the most part, you still have Arabic speakers. Like all of them are Arabic speakers, so they have kept the language. But the original writings of the text of the biblical text, like this, what we know as the biblical canon, like the 66 books, they were written in Hebrew, some were written in Greek, all of that. I know a lot of people speak those languages, so there's a lot of translation, mistranslation, everybody knows about that, but so there's a lot less chance to wiggle away based on it's misinterpreted, there's a lot less chance as a Muslim. But for a Christian, there's a lot more opportunity to pick and choose and see what suits you. So I feel like a lot of women will be there, but this doesn't explain women who are in Islam. And again, it's just part of it. More work is, and we need to admit that more work is done to indoctrinate women than to indoctrinate men.
Yeah.
It does, more work is done.
This is the one thing that I think atheist men we kind of gloss over.
Mm-hmm. More, because for you to make somebody accept an inferior position, for you to, especially notice how religion is given to women. Not only is it given from a place of romance and eroticism, it's also given from a place of guilt. Guilt is a very powerful emotion. Forget men and all of those things. But the first stories you are told when you want to begin your indoctrination as a child into Christianity is what? The fall of man. And expressly, nobody who is telling you that story, hardly will you find somebody that doesn't paint it as a female issue. The woman caused it. It is told there. And then you are told, literally in Genesis, Eve's punishment is very simple. In fact, as a Christian, this was something I quoted a lot. Even though a lot of people will still describe me as Christian, a lot of people in my life. But, it's a messy one, but I just have a broad knowledge about these things. And where my beliefs lie don't matter, but these things show themselves in the real world. And that's why
to that Genesis woman, this thing, like the woman, you've been instructed that the woman caused it. Then as you are getting into your teenage years, you are beginning to you are being told that you are a source of temptation.
Yes.
With so cover your body.
Guilt. Exactly. There's a lot of guilt. Like in Genesis, the woman's punishment is that in sorrow will you conceive. So obviously this is to explain the pain of childbirth. This is to explain the pain of like menstruation and all this, and like the female pain, like the biological female pain. So her punishment is thus: in sorrow would you conceive, and your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over thee. And I quoted this a lot, right? That the idea of men being above women is one of the worst punishments that anybody could have thought about, and the Bible acknowledges it. It acknowledges that this is a punishment. It is so when men say this is especially religious men say this is the natural order of things. This is not the natural order of things. God had to punish the woman to make it so. And like the other punishments, like the pain of conception, haven't we tried to reduce the pain of conception? Women used to die in childbirth, now less so.
Yeah.
Yes, you will still be sick. Yes, you will still suffer some things, but women used to die in childbirth. So
at a higher rate, they still die.
Exactly. So they still die, but like then it used to be very, very serious. And we have tried to mitigate that punishment. So I used to argue, that was my argument for the feminist point of view. I'm like, shouldn't we try to mitigate the punishment of, your desire shall be unto your husband? Shouldn't we try to move to a world where that's not the case? Right? Because it's a punishment, and fine punishment if God ever thought of one. So, so that's part of like the whole Genesis story. That was a tangent. But as a woman being indoctrinated, you are told it's your fault. And you are told, furthermore, it's your fault. Your brothers will fall because of you, because of your curves and whatever cover up. Islam takes this to its extreme, but Christianity does as well. And it's not just your fault, but you are also man's redemption. You're also man's redemption, like the quote-unquote Proverbs 31 woman, right? He who findeth a wife, findeth a good thing. Like, women are taught that it was our fault, so we have to be the redemption.
You help the man, make the man better, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So, and then you couple that with a world that doesn't work for you. This world doesn't work for women. Like, I'm sure a lot of misogynistic men can listen and be like, there are so many safety nets given to women. But why do they need to be safety nets? It's because the world as it is, without all these little things that all these small organizations are doing to like level the playing field, which doesn't even come close. The world is so unfair to women. So when you're trying to get something that you couldn't get otherwise, and you can look up to this all-powerful, all-loving, desirable, everything, this husband, this friend, this everything, and you're told that he works for you, he works with you, he works within you, he's with you, you're never alone, you're never scared. Tell me you won't buy into that. Tell me that isn't compelling.
So it's a good sales pitch.
It is, and this is why a lot of women hold on to it. Actually, again, more work is done to indoctrinate. You don't need to indoctrinate men. That's why I feel like men's religious faith are more shaky than women. Yeah. Because a lot of times they are in it for the benefits. Like as a man, they just tell you, like, what does it take to indoctrinate a Muslim man? 72 virgins. You get for a Christian man, you have a good end of the deal. You're not really at fault. God loves you. He made you the head over your woman. Like, I don't know. And then you get to head churches, you get to have power over people, all of that. You get to see yourself represented in God himself. When God decided to come to the world, embodied in flesh, he came in a male form. So you get to have your existence, venerated and put into the status of the divine. Why will you be mad at that? Like, why would you get to see a myriad of disciples and all of those things, men in different forms? Like, there's no female representation in the Bible. Except,
like when they try to stress, Jesus had female disciples. How many were part of the 12?
This is the thing. Jesus,
How many? All these token disciples
like,
they scrape the bottom of the barrel for.
Jesus had female disciples, but they were not a lot. One, two. A lot of them were written out of the text. There's Thecla. Thecla is one that like went with Paul around. She was actually like before all these Barnabas, all these people. There's Thecla, and like she and Paul went around. They were not together romantically, at least none of the text suggests that. But she has been completely written out of everything. So they are.
Where can she be found? Apocrypha or where?
Yeah, the apocryphal works and the works that did not make it to the Bible canon. She has her letters and all of those things. So you can definitely just Google her, like for people listening, Thecla. So Apostle Thecla, she was also someone that moved around. But again, even in the apocryphal works and all of those things, like she can't really, like no one knows much about her. So yeah, there's that. Even like, and a lot of these texts are not even apocryphal. Some of them are actually authentic. We have good reason to believe that these are authentic texts that were just left out of the conversation.
They didn't make the cut.
Yeah, they didn't make the cut. Like, because like when Christians are like, the Bible is a complete book. No, there was a lot of human intervention to make it seem that way. Even the way it is, like the current 66 books in the canon. It's still, but there was a lot of human work went into deleting certain things, adding this, that, and that. So when you say it's divinely orchestrated, no. Men sat down and said, we will add this. Genesis comes after this after this, this after this. And it was thousands of years of work to get it to where it was. So of course, like it has a semblance of being good. I would think so, with the amount of effort that they put into it. Even then, it's far from perfect. That's one of the kind of running things that goes against like the Bible being a divinely inspired word. Like just the sheer amount of human work that went into it, and it is imperfect as you would expect from a human work. But besides that, back to what I was saying, lots more work goes into indoctrinating women than indoctrinating men. It's just the truth. A lot of men don't have sound theology. I saw, who listens to a lot of new pastors, I have to sit into that. It takes you to convince a woman a lot more to convince a woman of her secondary place, of her punishment, of who she's supposed to be, and the service that she's supposed to provide for men.
That's
more perks.
That's why they have to keep reminding them. Submit.
Men
constant reminder.
Who subscribe? That's why the whole stereotype of a woman who indulges in carnal pleasures, but who is also religious, and they will go to like church or something. Like it's more common than the opposite, because men don't have those qualms. Men don't have those qualms when they're doing those things. They don't really think like that. But like female guilt is something that's weaponized.
What is Christianity if not guilt?
That works well on wonders on women, because as a woman you're just taught to feel guilty. Like you're always paying for something. You're always paying for something. Like look at you are sexually assaulted, yet you're the guilty one. Yet you're the aggressor. Like how dare you tempt a man in your pajamas as a 5-year-old? How dare you? Like, men, but that's besides the point. So I think this is why you see a lot less religious women. Women are just not deconverting. And true, we notice it. Like women are more likely to deconvert from their primary organized religions. I don't know. I don't have stats on this, so let me not say more likely. But anecdotally, I've seen more women leave their organized religions and subscribe to something.
Yeah.
So like the new age woo, spirituality, astrology, all of that, everything that comes with that.
The astrology girlies.
Because you don't that need this world is us. And it's even more us if you're a woman. So to say like you want people to raw dog this life. And don't forget, like, this is another angle. As a society, we are taught that pain, suffering, and sacrifice makes us more pure, makes us more divine. We are taught that to suffer is more noble. So, this is like the aesthetic philosophy and all of that. Like I used to, really delve into that, like the idea of prayer and fasting, of denial, of deprivation, and how that brings you closer to God or closer to the divine, right? How that elevates you. Now, bring it to the female biological experience. You notice certain patterns begin to emerge. There's a lot of pain physically. There's a lot of pain socially. There's a lot of pain even like in financial, every sense, right? And just that feeling that pain can be for nothing is hard to accept. So it's easier to accept that pain brings you closer to the divine, and you can access the supernatural, you can access the divine. It's easier to believe that. And that's why I feel like they look for methods to kind of channel, like it's like this pain cannot be for nothing. It must be making me more powerful. It must be making me more spiritual. Like the idea that women are more spiritual than men. That's part of where it comes from. That women are more grounded because they have to be. Men can afford to have their head up in the clouds, dreaming and stuff. But as a woman, it's here and now, right? Yeah. And I kind of empathize with that position. I get it, like personally, on a very personal level, I actually understand that position. But it's just that I'm too much of a cynic and a skeptic to accept it. But it's one of those things as well. So all these things that I've mentioned from the beginning. So I mentioned like the space that irreligious men even occupy, and the idea of logic, and the conversations are very male-centric. Like as a man, if you're listening to this, like actually give it deep thought. Like the conversations you have, irreligious or religious, but irreligious men for here. How many of these conversations will appeal to women? And if you gender swapped all the conversations, would it appeal to you as a man? If they were only talking about female philosophers, so it's something to think about. And then this whole logic thing, and men jerking off, all of that. So that's another one. Then we come to the part where women are not even that irreligious. So I talked about the romantic, erotic, and the part of that, like that attraction to these male figures, and how powerful that can be, power of guilt, and how more work in our society goes into indoctrinating women. Yeah. Because it's women that would give their religion to their children. That's the truth. It's women that imparts culture. Like women are the disseminators of culture. It's not really men. Like it's women that.
These are the things that made me to start saying that if we really want to start having a more secular society in this country, women need to get involved. Need to get involved. And if we are making it uncomfortable for them, we are just jonesing.
I would say something to you, Ranting. It's a tough line to walk, because intelligent women don't like being patronized. So if you go out of your way to say certain things, a lot of women will be repelled by that space, because sometimes it can read as ingenuine. That's the truth. It has you don't have to announce that you are including women.
That's already source. It needs to, the activities you do will make it obvious that they are included without you stating it obviously.
I feel like the solution is just not to make things male-centric. It doesn't matter because including, going out of it to include women is artificial. A lot of women will shy away from that. They would rather deal with women including women than men trying to include women. But it's more so, let your conversations be double problem. If you notice, when you are doing all those the religious rooms, like that time in Clubhouse, when you talk about how the Bible condones rape, you have more women there. This is a general conversation. It can be a general conversation, but this is something that affects women, and it's a dog whistle, right, for women, right? When you talk about abortion, this is a conversation. This is a human conversation. If you talk about like expressly, is the Bible misogynistic? I feel like a lot of religious women don't want to accept that. But if you deal with like the topics and the symptoms and all of that, even though I don't really subscribe to that.
No, I think this is actually my goal, in the sense that to encourage the pre-existing irreligious women, that's like yourself,
okay,
to feel comfortable in relating with us. And when topics like this, abortion and rape, they will take forefront, because it's not our lead reality. There's a way we can never present it in a way, and in fact it won't be repulsive to the religious women.
Yeah, it will be repulsive. I was just looking at it from the double way, like it's also encouraging women who are questioning whether this space is like you can have faith but still be irreligious. You know, that's one of the things. I feel like women are more likely to be optimistic, be hopeful, and it feels like in an irreligious space that doesn't have stock. But you can think that
we are depressed motherfuckers. Oh,
exactly, like it's a lot of male depression and all of that, and male loneliness. Sometimes women don't just have that, like, you know. Women tend to have more close-knit friendships, more connections, all of that. So a lot of times that faithlessness and like that desertedness that feels characteristic of not having an organized religious faith might seem out of reach for a lot of women.
I'm just thinking to create that space where they feel where we don't look like we are faking, and they can educate us even more from their lived experiences.
It has to be organic, and it's just
part of why I started this whole ranting is this shit, because a lot of Nigerians will never listen to Igbo talking. They say it's Igbo. Even myself, so that's why when you're more I don't believe in your God, they Chris. You need to like pause. Why will Nigeria get to this point?
The work you've done matters. Like when I first started having, my doubts and all of this, I saw you. Like I saw you on Twitter. And even though I'm not as boisterous as you, and I might not agree with the way you sometimes go about things, I feel like it does matter. Because when I kind of read your tweet, I went to your page and I saw you had a podcast. And I found that so fascinating. I'm like, there are others enough to be on a podcast? And I started listening and I was like, wow, I couldn't have thought this existed. So like it's just, the work you do is slow. You are a Nigerian podcaster, so it's slow.
Very niche.
I hope you have seen the progress, that there are way more on the internet now, especially on Twitter. Have you noticed there are way more? Like sometimes there is a religious tweet from all these blogs, and you would expect that most Nigerians talking will just come and take a religious perspective. But I see the irreligious perspective is they at least voiced. It's not even though
it's forcing the religious people to start making threats against atheism.
Religious people are engaging more with it, right? And you have more people kind of deconstructing their worldviews because of that. And a good part of that is because of you. So even though sometimes I might not agree with how you go about things, I cannot deny that there is a benefit. There is a benefit.
No, let me be honest. I always try to articulate this is how I choose to express myself.
Yeah.
And I want it's kind of a very polar way of approach, which will catch attention. And what I hope is to inspire other irreligious people to be like, man, this nigga is saying rubbish. Let me show you this is what's, and they bring their own calm approach, their own way.
Yeah.
It's the way the four horsemen did it, and the people now have the audacity to speak up and do it their own way. And now say the four horsemen are like bullshit to most atheist activists now. So there's no big you go tell people what to do. That's basically it.
Yeah, like I don't knock it at all. Like even though that this might not be my preferred mode of speaking, I don't knock it at all. Like at all. When I see it, I might not agree with it, but it catches attention. And again, within your comments, common people are there. Within your quotes, common people are there. So they can see that. They can see the actual argument for it. But yeah, that's honestly just the thing. I don't know how this issue can be solved because it starts from young. They catch us young.
Yeah, it's to first agree there's a problem before we solve it.
We're talking about this, and I guess me being here, maybe a woman would listen to it and feel less alone or feel like I've articulated some of our thoughts. And another thing I was talking about was like community. Like a lot of men are more, involved with the atheist space because they don't have community outside of this, right? A lot of men, like, especially when you deconvert and like this way, like it gets lonely for men really quickly. So can you imagine as a man, like being in a fellowship, right? And this was friendships.
People will start talking things that will just be pissing you off.
And then you leave the fellowship, right? What else is left? Of course, you will seek, communion and community with other, like, quote unquote, like-minded people because
the big bros.
They're not a monolith. So, for women don't really have that problem like that. Like even like if I leave my religious communities, all of that, I will still have something to hold on to. It's just because of the way we are socialized. Women are socialized to have a lot of social safety nets. Like, I mean, when I say social, like, I mean, like, emotional, all of those things, So there's that. So also it comes from elite, right? But I feel like, but there's also clearly a desire for women to communion with like-minded people. I've noticed that right now, even fellow women on social media have been making more concerted efforts to gather a female space. But if you guys make them feel like the generalized space, even though it's majority men, is also a welcome space for women. Yes, I feel like you have more people. I think slowly but surely.
Those are the steps. Yeah.
But yeah,
those are the steps.
Those are my thoughts.
I've noticed even our space where some of our philosophy guys begin to go back and forth. Next thing, people are leaving. They're living.
It's not because women are not smart and they engage in philosophy. Like, because I know a lot of men.
People be self they switch off. I mean, that philosophical is the other things. I'm not just. I'm like, God, should be your God. I don't get time for ontological and all those shit.
Exactly. Like, it's not that women are not like interested in philosophy or abstract thinking. It's that it's truly very male centric. And the thing is that personally, I don't really care because it's fascinating to me regardless. That's me personally. So that's like sometimes I still stay, but a lot of times, it just hits me that these are men just talking. Like when I hear those philosophy bros, I'm like, these are men just talking, And I'm just like, I need to get tired because I'm like, yes, existentialism, yes, Albert Camus, yes, Nietzsche, sure. But it just gets tiring and it bores a lot of people. Men and women alike. Well, I'm not saying that it's not relevant. It is like these are the conversations that really, really interest me. But again, it alienates a lot of women. That's the truth of the matter because it's just male discourse. Bring some female philosophers. Let's talk about what it is to be. Let's talk about, Simone de Beauvoir, Ayn Rand. Controversial, I know. But yeah, there's so many other people we could kind of discuss about. But yeah, those are my thoughts from, I feel, a uniquely female experience on why women and religion in general.
Yeah, so any other, to the women listening, if you'd like to share more points, reach out.
To the women listening, religious, non-religious, again, this world as it is not built for us, but we have done good work into bringing it to where we are. 50 years ago, 20 years ago, in certain countries, women can't even drive. Women can't even get a passport without a man. It means like, what does that mean? It means that like your mode of moving around, your source of identification cannot be gotten without a man. women, even now, we still have the practice of women changing their names, changing ownership from their fathers to their husbands. Fine, we may not see it like that, but that's the basis of the culture. That's the basis of that practice. So it's deep and it's entrenched, but we have made so much progress. We can vote, we can get shit done, we can work. A lot more companies are giving
there's still asterisks to that as far as Nigeria.
A lot more companies are giving necessary parental leave, so you are not ostracized for being a woman and wanting to take care of your child within work. So they're giving men paternity leave as well, so that both sexes are impacted by having kids, and hopefully that brings us closer to an equal state of things. So as a woman, it might feel like it's a lot of despair, but we've made so much progress. To make more, we have to keep going, right? We have to keep going. We can really change things out. Like, look at what we've done in 100 years. And I just telling all the women that we can make more progress, and the world doesn't have to be the way it is, and it can get demoralizing and can get sad that men are sometimes like this, but there are men out there who are willing to be allies. And even though this is asking for a lot, we cannot ostracize them, and getting into community with men who have deconstructed certain high level views. I feel like these could be allies for a fight towards a more equal society. So that's my message to women, and just to really just women, just sit down and think about how these things benefit you, or whether they do at all, and how you have been kind of molded into these beliefs through, like all the things I've said, the erotic, the guilt thing. I think about how that shows up in your life, and maybe it starts off something. But I feel like I've talked a lot. I'm getting sick of my own voice now. I hope
it's wise. Who else will talk a lot? Now you go talk now. You don't know me one day. They talk easy. You see this. I've come to the end. We have dropped enough. It's been nice way to end the episodes. I really appreciate you for coming.
No problem.
And as usual, we hope to do this again on another matter.
Yes, so even with all the family kini brouhaha, honestly, I cannot sit back and feel like I have insight on these things and feel like, I'm going to hide somewhere. If them find it, let them find it. Obviously, I want to make it easy for them, but I want people who are already seeking irreligious things to find this, right?
No.
Like family, all of those things. Give me some years. We'll see how it goes.
They're shaking. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please consider subscribing. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and other places podcasts are available. Then check out the show notes for links you may find useful, especially our Discord server. We'd love to have you there. Have a great week, and I will catch you on the next one.